only memories or statements. So when I walked away on April 1, 2006, for me it was a clean break. I'd have nothing to do with advertising. I'd have nothing to do with Equus. I'd certainly have nothing to do with Martin Soren. May they rest in peace or turmoil, but I would have nothing to do with them. And I was very, very clear. It's not that someone tells you, oh, but would you recommend an advertising agency, now that I advise chairman CEOs? I said, I won't get into it. Because you've got to take not just a considered stand, but you've got to have the ability to move on and move ahead. Life is not an umbilical cord. Even an umbilical cord is cut at childbirth.
Well, some people keep latching on to it.
Well, now, if they do, they do. But, at their own sufferance. Because I genuinely believe that you can't move on if you're anchored. Have you ever seen a ship sail with its anchor down in the sea? No. So, you can't say, oh, I want to go ahead, but still I want to retain some of the past. And that, to my mind, is yet another element of the avarice of the normal human being. We don't want to let go. We don't want to let go in relationships. We don't want to let go in terms of, the work we do. We always want to be there.
But don't you think that's human nature?
Of course it is. But, human nature also needs to evolve. There was a time in society which, when we began, and I'm not even getting into who came first, but you look at the Adam-Eve situation, they were in love without being married. Today, I've often heard the quote, and people ask me, why aren't you married? I said, you can either be married or happy. But that's not a statement on marriage. My whole perspective is that to each his own. Today, we've gone back to very high divorce rates because the individuality, which was suppressed over centuries by one dominant partner or the other, has now frittered away, and for the right reasons. Financial independence is not the reason why women or men come into their own. It is their ability to believe. It is, to use the word you keep mentioning, confidence, that yes, I can move ahead without someone's participation in my life. And it's not about dependency. So I think that, the understanding of history, to my mind, is a critical element in defining the future. Living in history is a bad idea.
So coming back to your, your experience in advertising, how do you judge an advert? What makes an advert memorable?
An advertisement is judged by only one thing and one thing alone. Does it sell the product, or does it win the creative joker an award? If it wins the creative guy an award and doesn't sell the product, it's a bad ad. Simple. This whole thing about creativity and all is utter rubbish. Creativity cannot be at the sacrifice of brands that have invested hugely. So I've had in my life copywriters come to me with flowery language, and I've said, but what are you selling? And I used to have a simple way of judging advertising. And I don't want to blow my own, I judged advertising pretty well. We launched very successful brands. There was a brand of bread, and it was great bread, but how can I make bread exciting for you? So we ran limericks which said, Bakwas advertising, first class bread. Which means the advertising is silly, but the bread is great. And that's how...
It worked.
It worked. And today it's the biggest brand in India, 98% market share. So the point is, you've got to have advertising which is unique. I remember the grand old man of hoteliering, Bicky Oberoy's father, Rai Bahadur Oberoi, the day he died. At that time I was working on a rival hotel brand. And I knew Bicky Oberoi would be worried and concerned with making funeral arrangements for his father. And the agency would be still crawling. So I ran an ad the next day with the Namaste, which was the sign of that rival hotel chain, saying, Rai Bahadur MS Oberoi, Salam. I mean, Bicky Oberoi calls me the next day, he says, what the hell, you hijacked my dad? I said, no, he's dead. We hijacked the idea. So it's very important for advertising, to my mind, to play the role of honesty, and a lot of the advertising isn't, and to sell the product.
So think outside the box.
Not only think outside the box, think the consumer. Get under the skin of the consumer. Understand what the consumer wants. The biggest myth is, at times, even the consumer doesn't know what he wants. The story of Apple is not a story of technology. It's a story of inventing desire. Steve Jobs invented desire in everything you touched. Otherwise, you wouldn't be buying iPad 1, iPad 2, iPad 3. You wouldn't have a situation where Apple today has $97.6 billion to give back in dividend. These are successful companies. What did Facebook do? Facebook stoked the desire that every human being has of peeping into everyone else's lives.
Yeah.
Facebook is not about friendship. Facebook is about telling the guy, mine is bigger than yours, it's car, home, friend circle. So that's reality.
Yeah.
I mean, that's human nature. I mean, you know, there's no judgment call that we need to make. But the most successful brands have been brands that have understood the consumer, that have had a relationship and not been transactional. That's why they're successful.
So Aquas recently created a very memorable, and some may say, let me finish.
Risky ad.
A risky ad, which read, quote unquote, Suhel has a very small one.
Yes.
With the shape of a small banana next to the word small. What was the idea behind that advert?
I think it was done by my brother to win an award, though he says it was done to my brief. Counselage, because of my commitment to culture, and you know, I'm not the Tatas or you know the Mahindras, but I still sponsor a large part of the Jaipur Literature Festival. And the Jaipur Literature Festival has a brochure, so you've got to do a company ad. So my brief to my brother was, Counselage is happy that it works with a few, but it actually works with the best. I'm happy to be small, but I know I work with the best, which is a fact. We work with, of the 14 clients I work with, each one of them is number one in their category. And it's very, very difficult to achieve that. And I'm a one-person show. So when I gave my brother the brief, this is the ad he churned out. And he thought I'd be like squeamish about it. But then I know the media pretty well.
Yes.
Now, what he did was he tweeted, but he has very few followers. So that there was no damage done there.
Okay.
And I know no one reads a brochure. So there was no damage done there. What we didn't figure out was that you'd read it. So now about millions of viewers will know about it. But who cares?
Well, it was a good one. I think, you know, it was memorable.
And I think it went with my ability to be provocative. So I think a lot of people said it must be Suhel's idea, which Swapan has crafted, but it was the other way around.
Okay, moving on. You've acted in countless plays, and you were also in the recent movie, Guzarish. Now, you're clearly a very talented actor. Why didn't you just put all your energy in acting and focus on acting? Because who knows, you could have been the next Bachchan or the next Khan.
Good point. But you know, we grew up in Calcutta, which had a certain snobbishness about cinema. Even in Calcutta, when I worked with Mrinal Sen and you know, I did the Ray short films, a lot of people said, oh, but why would you go to Bollywood? Why would you go to Bombay? So Bombay was seen as this really crass place which no one would inhabit. I did Guzarish because Leela Bansali's casting director called me. I still remember I was in Spain on holiday and she said, would you do the role? I said, I will only agree to doing the role once I read it. So I read the role. It was the role of a doctor. And the film, as you know, is about Hrithik Roshan being a paraplegic. And it's about euthanasia. And I had done a play by Brian Clark called Whose Life Is It Anyway? Which then became a famous film with Richard Dreyfuss, which is also about euthanasia. Now, euthanasia, in order to act in Whose Life Is It Anyway, where I played the paraplegic, I knew the laws that are prevalent across the world. And I also knew the passionate discontent that lies within the heart of a paraplegic. So it was not a cinema role for me. It was very expressive, it was very cerebral, and most importantly, it was very enjoyable. And Leela Bansali is a great director. He almost takes as long as some of you guys must take to light up, but no, I'm just joking. But he's almost as laborious and as anal about the slightest of detailing.
But why didn't you give acting your 100%? Because when you were on set, of course, you would give it your 100%, but you were so involved in your advertising career. Do you think if you just focus on acting, that...
Acting is too much of a gamble. I can tell you of some of the finest actors in India, some of the finest actors in the world, who've never made a mark in cinema. great actors on theatre have not been as eminently successful in cinema. Because to my mind, cinema is a lot about, it's like a gamble. And a film, you're only as good as your last film. And the good is defined by success. It's not defined by, the inherent qualities of that movie. Guzarish is a great film to my mind, not because I've acted in it, but it's bombed in the box office. So these are the realities that I didn't want to. And one other thing, I've never gambled. I don't go to casinos, I don't play cards, I don't go to the derby. So for me, cinema would have been a gamble. And I was too confident not to take a gamble, which I knew would be a gamble and may go either way. So it's not about being risk averse. I just thought the whole exercise to be stupid.
But I understand that no particular role defines you. But what do you enjoy doing most? When you're in front of the camera, when you're creating a branding strategy, when you're public speaking?
When I'm walking in St. James's Park here, or I'm going scuba diving, I enjoy doing everything. So in more ways than one, I am a jack of all trades and a master of none, but a mistress to the enjoyable vicissitude of life. And that's what we've got to be. This whole thing, please focus on one thing. What are you really good at? I don't know. I could make a very mean ande ki bhurji. So, would you say I'm a good cook? I could also teach you the tango, not that you don't know. So,
actually, I don't know.
So then I could teach you the tango. But the point is, to say, what are you actually good at? You enjoy everything. And being good, to my mind, is all contextual. It's all benchmarking.
Some say you're famous for being famous.
True.
In your opinion, what is your claim to fame?
Now that's another, to my mind, it's an interesting phrase that has been used, but to my mind, that's a misnomer only on logical grounds. You can't be famous for being famous because in the first place, you would have to be famous for something. Otherwise, you wouldn't get there. After that, what happens is, you do, and I completely agree that this may be true, not just for me, for anyone who's, if you'd call it that, famous. Why are you famous? If you're on television with a point of view every day, you have that little celebrity hood or, the famous phrase added to your life. But people have to realize that you didn't get there because you were born into, a filmy family or you were a politician's son or daughter. So you've got to make sure that you work the steps. A. B, what you've also got to realize is that fame is equally transitional. There will be a better public speaker tomorrow. There will be, and there are better actors.
So did fame just happen, or did you seek it?
I think it just happened. I would never seek it. In fact, in my public, or in my actually private persona, qua the public, I hate meeting people. I have the same set of friends. Yes, I add friends, but I maintain one-on-one relationships with them. I don't go out and pump flesh. Now, a lot of people say, oh, we saw you on page 3. When I ask them for what, they say, oh, that we don't remember. Now, the tragedy is, whether it is England or India or America, the page 3 press is coming into mainstream activities. Michael Douglas and I did a book reading for the Taj in New York on October 18 last year. And the page 3 press of the tabloid press was in New York. Now, why on earth would I be blamed? I'm not stripping or advertising some jewels or taking part in an egg hunt or being paraded like an elephant. There it was. So there's the press.
We will continue our conversation with Suhel Seth shortly. See you after a break.